My name is Bruce Myers. I'm currently the head men's tennis coach at Bucknell University. Would have, I guess, air quotes, completed my fourth season there. Originally from northern Indiana, kind of grew up in and around the greater Philadelphia area. Went to a small school in Virginia, played tennis, graduated, got a job in marketing, ended up becoming a vice president in the company. Uh, Actually, then became CEO, bought out a partner. In 2007, I sold the company to an outfit out of California and retired. Got bored, played a lot of tennis, played a lot of golf, and my old college tennis coach became the athletic director at Randolph-Macon and asked, hey, you're not doing much. You want to coach? We built a brand new facility there. So in 2012, I got into coaching and have kind of moved around a little bit, but loved it ever since. So, yeah.
And it's interesting how I kind of have the same basic story that I was away from it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then an old coach of mine kind of got me back involved. And the question was, why haven't I been doing this before?
Right.
It's like, what was I thinking actually living a normal life? This is
Yeah.
much better. Yeah.
So much better. And it's funny because my athletic director and I mean, he was in my wedding and everything like that. We kept my coach kept in close contact, but he's like, in college coaching, recruiting is nothing more than marketing. And you're selling the university, you're selling. He's like, it's a good tie-in. You can still use your business acumen, and now you get to coach tennis. I mean, combine it, how much better can you get than that?
So I'm going to jump around the timeline here a little bit, but since you mentioned that part, when you go to recruit, obviously you're not coaching at LSU,
Right.
but you're also still a major player. So when you go to, I guess I'm saying, do you go look at more of the high school players? You look at more of the tournament players? Who are you looking at when you start to recruit?
And Division One level men's tennis is 54% international, so it's becoming obviously a more worldly game. So, if you look at my team, it's half American, half international. So pretty much the world is open. Obviously Bucknell Patriot League a little bit higher academic, but I think we're fortunate that I think studies show that your individual sports, sometimes your tennis, your golf, your swimming, tend to have good time management skills and maybe higher grades and things like that. So, which is, we're fortunate. And I spend usually half the summer in America recruiting. We'll take a big trip to Europe or whatever and spend some time over there. Back in my day, it was letters and phone calls and postcards. Now you can get results with, there's UTR and tennis recruiting and videos, and you can do a lot of it remotely, which obviously in the current situation, we're not getting the tournament results, but we can still look at videos and have more meaningful, longer conversations, which is kind of neat. So
now, is there, and this is something maybe a larger picture kind of question, but is there a concrete reason why you have more international players than American players now?
Yeah. I know the USTA and a lot of the industry have done studies on that, and there's a certain thing that Americans tend to. I mean, I'm sure you played multiple sports. I played multiple sports. Where it seems like the Europeans, the Latin Americans, maybe will focus on. I mean, they'll dabble in soccer or football or things like that, but it seems like they focus quicker and earlier at one sport and kind of. Right. So they're oftentimes more developed and have been playing at a higher level for years. So it's kind of where some of the Americans you get in, if you get the right player, I mean, you're getting a kind of a raw tool that you hope to develop and grow and things like that. So you hope to have a little bit of a mix that someone you can grow and develop, and you get the right kid, and then maybe an international that's maybe has a little bit more seasoning and in background. So
now, if you're playing, say, in Argentina, how easy is it to adjust to being at Bucknell?
And it's not, and that's the funny thing, that so like being a Northeast school, pretty much half of our season's indoors. So like the Latin and South American typically are playing on this outdoor slow red clay. So, we'll look at more of, I've got Swiss and a Swede and UK kids that are playing half their season, have similar climates, playing a lot of indoor tennis. Where if you look at like, Miami and some of the southern schools, they'll have a lot more of a Latin influence because those kids are grinding outside in the heat all the time. So there's definitely teams are very climate based, which is kind of funny. So.
Well, I like I said, I grew up in North Central Ohio, and
Yep.
I'm in Las Vegas now. The last picture I have of my car was it buried under snow and ice. And
Yeah, right.
I'm done. Yeah, so
Right. Exactly.
I can comprehend that. I understand. Okay, so now how did you make the transition, or did you make the transition? You think from being the mindset of player to coach? Now, obviously, you didn't do it right away, but
Right.
still, it's like, what is that transition in? Is it in your head, or is it like, okay, I don't play now, I coach?
And I think it was more for me was because I took such a gap between
Right.
playing in college. It almost because I was a tennis junkie. There was I would my wife and I have been to. We usually picked 2 tournaments a year, one domestic. Like we'll go to Winston-Salem to watch the Open there, and we'll go to Italy to watch the Italian Open. So we'll pick 2 tournaments a year. So and I find myself while Federer's playing a no name in the first round. I would be on the practice courts watching,
Right.
Verdasco train for an hour and a half. There's nothing better to watch a pro just train.
Right, exactly.
And it's, it's watching what they did and seeing the difference between, a lot of the difference between a top level professional and my players is just consistency and the ability to do it over and over again. So it's more the transition from tennis junkie to coach was pretty simple. So that was made it fun that I can actually see what I've been watching for years and kind of apply it to my student athletes. So.
And it's funny that you mentioned that watching them train. We used to take our kids to Mason for the tournament outside.
One of my favorites. Favorites.
And we would try and walk them past they're like, no, this is what you want to see.
Right.
This is the good stuff here, because that's the week before the U.S. Open normally.
Yep.
And you had some players that were there just to get the work in.
Yep.
And then others trying to keep the ranking up and try and get into the Open. And you could tell who they were. It's like, well, I don't really want to play too hard this week because I got the U.S. Open starting next week. But I'm still going to go through my training. So that was always the fun part of saying, no, you want to go over here and watch.
Actually, I think some of the players with kids would bring it because Kings Island was right there, and it was kind of
There's that too, right? Yeah, all right. And it's like that we can actually vacation while we're working,
exactly,
quote unquote. But going past the practice courts for both sides of it, players and coaches, I don't think there's anything better for that. You have to see how they do it, and then as a coach, you can kind of pick apart some of the things they do. Go, now, do you remember when they did that? So that's
right.
Yeah. So when we're looking at the season, I know it's a sore point right now to talk about this season, but when we're looking at the season as a college coach, how do you set up your off season going into the season and then going into the next off season?
And it's funny because this so truncated this year. I mean, the biggest part, for the most part, my student athletes aren't coming to play and graduate and play professionally. I mean, they're looking for jobs after graduation. So the hardest part usually for me is we have to take 2 or 3 weeks in the fall season is just fitness. It's just getting back because they've been doing internships and working and things like that. So this year we've expanded that by 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. So now every other, even the coaches who have maybe even a higher level player I've spoken to like, yeah, we're going to spend 2 or 3 weeks of just pure fitness to get back to where we are because I mean, who knows when these kids are going to get back on court, and you can only lift so many things in your house and it doesn't replicate
right, yeah.
a 3-set match.
You can only chase the dog around so much, right? I understand that.
So a part of me is like, hey, finally I'm on par with some of my coaching comrades who don't have to deal with that, what I have to deal with. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing is like, and there's so many different, like I've got kids in Texas right now who are still hitting, and I've got kids in North Jersey and New York who might not get on a tennis court for week to week. So you're going to have different levels of training, and it's going to be really unique. So,
well, and that's the thing that the level playing field. When what we would go through in high school is you'd have kids that were playing year round at the club.
Yep.
And then just kind of what you're mentioning. Then you have some kids that were wrestling and playing soccer. So that 3 or 4 months multiplied by 4 or 5 years, some of them were getting a chance to hit. That's how they got ahead. Yeah. And now I think we're going to be seeing that as well. Who has a chance to get out on the court? Who doesn't? So And I don't think that's the thing that we're looking at as far as the regulations and the sanctions are concerned. We're not operating equally now.
Right. Yeah, and I saw the NCAA just came out with some they tweaked some of the summer rules where I know football players and some of the basketball players can get back on campus before way earlier than they could, assuming that things open up to do some training in the summer, which kind of hoping tennis, they do some of the other sports to allow the kids to come back, Division I, we can't start till the first day of class is our first day of practice, but it'd be great to get them back for a week to just get, going to prevent injuries and I think there's going to be some frustration early on, like why, what happened. So I'm hoping that they open up for some of the other sports as well. So.
And left to our own devices, we all develop habits. Some of them are better than the habits we had before. Some of them aren't.
Yes.
So you want to be able to nip those in the bud as quickly as you possibly can. Yeah. Now, when you say you're going overseas to recruit, what does that entail? Because like you said, you're doing some texting, you're doing some stuff here and there, but do you get a chance to see everybody live, or is that something that's desirous of you to do?
It is, but it's kind of being at a mid-major like Bucknell. Like there's a ton of showcases, even in Europe and overseas. There's a lot of showcases where 50 kids will hit in front of coaches. But if I'm there with USC and Stanford and Kentucky, like I'm not going to get the look. So it's kind of you do a little recon and kind of do a little one-on-one, and maybe the kids who either aren't as familiar with the U.S. college system or haven't been contacted by the big schools. That's the kind of kids that I love to go see them hit and train one-on-one and kind of educate them a little bit about what playing, being a student athlete in America is. Because, some of, like in England, they have college sports, but it's very low key. It's like 3 weeks, so to say, hey, we can take you, you're getting pro level training and experience, but you're also getting a fantastic education that you can take back home or stay in America. I think it's eye opening in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
And also, like you're saying, even if you don't make it on tour, you can still become a pro.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Well, and the thing that I've run across a lot of people is that when you get involved with college athletics, that it's not necessarily, the tour or the league or bust. It's now I'm learning something else. And I'm able to take that and I'm able to parlay that into maybe a coaching position, maybe an AD kind of track, or maybe just like you said, a marketing track or something like that. And something that I can use that background as something else.
Absolutely.
Talking to a lot of football players, it's like I'm able to use that training mentality into becoming a better business person.
Yeah, and there's there's so many companies out there who specifically target recruiting student athletes because a little bit competitive nature, which most athletes are, and then you get let's be honest, it's at the Division I level. Time management skills are big. They're waking up. I go to class. I go to weights. I go to practice. And so you've already got that down, which is big for employers. So I think they some look specifically for student athletes, which is really great. So.
Okay. Now, another thing that I just thought of when you mentioned that, as far as the recruiting process is concerned, individual sports are more individual sport oriented as far as how you get to the next level. Whereas team sports used to be anyway, you played for like I said, you played high school tennis, you played for your high school team or whatever. Now you have AAU and things like that. When you're playing in the traveling, the junior circuit, do you get more of a look to a guy that's playing in a tournament, say in Kalamazoo, as opposed to a kid that made it to state out of Oklahoma?
Yeah, except once again, like Kalamazoo, one of the big nationals, even if I'm in Kalamazoo, Penn State, Michigan, Arizona, everybody's there. So, and they get there for like the second, third, fourth, I'm looking for maybe the first round loser or, and so there's definitely a different level kid, but yeah, it would be more the state or even some of the smaller tournaments where the big schools aren't at because, tennis players plus or minus. I mean, most athletes, that the high school level have big egos and think, hey, I can go play number one well, you can't. And, they don't want to hear, but if nobody's looking at a kid, he just won, like you said, a tournament in Oklahoma and he gets some love from a Division I coach, that goes such a long way. And that's how, some of my best recruiting has been at tournaments in the middle of nowhere where there aren't other college coaches there. So,
Well, I know from where I came from, it's like no one's looking at this kid.
right,
He's really good, but he's not playing. He does a lot of other things, so
right.
he's not playing in these big tournaments. Why isn't, and that was kind of what I came up with, was like they're not paying attention because he's not on the radar where they want to be. And maybe he should have been thinking, I want to go. One of the kids I have went to Bowling Green,
Okay.
which doesn't have a team.
No.
They have a club team. It's like he could have played someplace, but he didn't really, wasn't on anybody's radar to bring him in.
It's easy to find the 5-star kid because everybody knows he's a 5-star kid.
Right.
It's when you hit on the kid who's a 2-star that's not. He was thinking like maybe a lower D3 that you can hit on, put in a D1 environment where he's getting much better training and hitting with better players who could. And he goes from playing number 8 on your roster to his junior. He's playing 2. You know he's going to be the captain of your team because he's done the right things to get there. He's more hungry. There's so many benefits to hit on a kid like that. So it's harder to find the kid, but
Right.
what you do, it's such a benefit to your program. So,
And plus, like you said earlier, he's going to a school with a better academic reputation than maybe someplace where he ended up playing number 7, number 8,
right.
and his degree maybe not mean as much. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when you get the right roster, which I know is impossible, when you get
Yes.
the right guy, and everything's clicking as well as it can, then what?
Yeah, and that's part of the things with the transfer portal. They changed the transfer rules, and what we're seeing, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but what and it happened to me last year. My number 1 was probably outperformed a Bucknell and transferred. And then you see on the portal, you see these mid-majors, the guys that play 1 or 2 at a mid-major who maybe Tennessee's looking at, or maybe a big-time program. And I hope the mid-majors doesn't become kind of a AAA for the big guys. But you're also seeing the guys who are 8 or 9 at the Power 5s who maybe are looking to get, there may be this exchange that way. But there's nothing, like I said, my number 1 from 2 years ago had a great year. He was a freshman, solid, but got some looks from some big schools and ended up transferring. So I hope that's not a trend, but maybe it will be.
Does it end up being a re-recruiting thing, or is it more of a word of mouth thing?
I think it's a re-recruiting thing in a lot of ways.
So is someone is reaching out to him and go, you could probably play here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen our facilities? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've talked to a few people. I don't like it, but I understand that it does work both ways.
Right.
And at least it should work both ways.
Yes.
But so now you're in you said this is your 4th year. You're in where even 4 years ago, you had more, obviously there's no stability for this year, but you probably had more stability on a roster 4 years ago than you do now.
Yes.
How do you, I guess is that okay? Is that the volatility keeps everybody on their toes, doesn't it?
It does. And it really makes you focus on not just the tennis and the wins and losses, but enhancing the entire student athlete experience. So we'll do we've done some things differently over the last probably 2 or 3 years to make sure that not only are they getting a great education and a great experience on court, but we'll, ironically, when our season was canceled, we were in California on spring break. We were supposed to go to Indian Wells, spend a day at the tournament there, and do some fun things out in California, which obviously didn't come to fruition. But so now I think some coaches are looking at creative ways to expand enhance the student athlete experience, which is big. They should have a great time because those are the kind of kids in 20 years who are going to help give back to your program or make connections with and things like that. So, is
it almost a re-recruiting of your own players, or is it's not quite that extreme?
I think we're getting to that point. I think some people will come in and, there's a Bucknell. My grandfather went to Bucknell. My dad went to Bucknell. So you've got that. You've got the kids, like I said, the kid who outperformed probably our level, who now transferred. Instead of playing 1 and being all Patriot League, is now playing 4 or 5 at a bigger school, and that's what he wanted, and he wanted a big city or whatever. So I think there's a lot of some re-recruiting, and then, but my number one who played number one for me this year came from a big Florida school. So it was kind of like I lost one, I got one.
You got one, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have to be more flexible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you learn when my number one came in, he told me about his experience, what he liked, what he didn't like, and you learn. So he didn't like this. Am I doing that? And you kind of play off that and maybe improve yourself as a on and off court coach, which is great. So.
And when they come in, you're more interested in what their expectations are as opposed to maybe what yours are.
Exactly, which is big. So.
Yeah. So when you do get someone from Switzerland or from Sweden or something like that, and he has aspirations of becoming a pro back in his homeland or whatever, is that a different approach to someone who is trying to get and not saying they're not, but someone who's trying to get the Bucknell education, the Bucknell experience? Do you have to treat them this differently, or is it we're going to give them all the Bucknell experience and then they take away with what they want?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely the latter. I mean, if we had a European come over that's looking to play professionally, you're probably going to get much better training atmosphere at a Power 5 or one of the bigger schools, because we use our 20 hours, but we don't miss class for them. Like our whole season, our whole schedule in the spring was all weekend and all. So we played 30 matches, 29 of them were weekends. So we don't have any negative impact upon their class schedule, where some of the bigger schools will go away for training blocks and things like that. And they can do a little more flexibility with the academics. So not that I'm not going to recruit a kid that's looking to play professional, but it's probably not the perfect fit for him here. So.
And that's, you bring that out up front. So
yeah,
everyone's on the same page. And then when he blossoms to be that kid, you're like, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've got one that's playing professionally right now, but it's the same. He worked and got better and versus came in with that expectation. There's certain things in a conversation, like if the first sentence is asking for a scholarship or the second sentence is like, my goal in life is to play professional. I'm like, well, we're not scholarship. I got to learn way more about you as a person, as a student before we have that conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's with the Title IX and all that. Are there, because I didn't get a chance to research it, how many teams in the Patriot League, in general, are D1 tennis programs? Is it everybody or? Everybody,
we're all 10, so 9. American does not have a program, but all the 9 other schools have men's programs, yes.
And that's, from what I've gathered, that's kind of a rarity.
It is, but because Patriot League is founded pretty much based on the Ivy League principles of non-scholarship. Now, we've gotten away from that, and programs have scholarships, and the football program has scholarships. And so, but it's still a similar concept where I don't think any programs in the Patriot League are fully funded, except for, Army and Navy are their own little
thing.
Right. So it's not like I'm going head to head with Boston University with scholarships. It's usually big city, little city, there's little tweaks and whatever. So it's kind of nice that no one's throwing scholarship dollars at kids in the Patriot League. So it's kind of academic reputation and things like that. So.
Okay. So, and I guess this is the elephant in the room. Where do we go now?
As far as
from recovering from this, I mean, it obviously depends on when this. I can't even bring myself to say it anymore.
Right.
When this is over, obviously you've had a lot of time to think about it.
Oh yeah.
Where depending upon sanctions and what we do here, what we do there, what is the mindset of a college coach and a college athletic director of how do we get this thing back on the rails?
Yeah, and I think Bucknell and some of the Patriot League schools are a little unique as far as because we're not big. We don't have a lot of scholarships. We do fundraising plays a huge role in my program as far as probably 50 to 60% of my operating budget comes from fundraising. So even it's not like we're making big budget cuts. And I think actually, to be selfish and honest, I think a lot of the mid-major programs are going to come back to us and maybe reduce scholarships and budgets and things like that, which is good for us. There's so many programs out there that rely so much on the football revenue, which is, so I guess there's Penn State being an hour away, I know like watching what the coaches said, well, we can play with 75% of the Big Ten schools this year. We don't need all 100. So I think so many people are waiting to see how football goes in the fall because it's such an integral part of college sports for all the sports. So you tell me, college football coming back?
Um, I have no idea. And normally it pains me to say things like that.
Right.
I am so clueless on what the possibilities are of everything.
Right.
You'll just say, well, are we going to finish the basketball, the NBA season?
I know.
No idea. I don't know if there's a good answer to that.
Right.
When will the Major League Baseball season start? I don't know if we even have one because you're going to have to condense it somehow.
Yes.
And then where is remember the strike sort year that the team with the best record in baseball didn't win the first half of the second half.
Amazing.
So, there are so many things that you cannot understand. And then we're trying as fans, we're trying to say, let's go as business as usual, but it's not as usual. Yep. For example, I'm sure you have a schedule already made out for next year, but can it be played?
And it's fun. It's not funny, but it's kind of, we're in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, a town of, 12,000 or whatever. It's already back to yellow. But if you look at like Boston University, who is in our conference, it's a much different, can we have a season without Boston? They're taking a year off. I mean, can you do,
right.
How creative are people going to be? And that's weird. It's frustrating.
Well, and I'm a mile away from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Yep. And it's like, okay, well, we can you're trying to reschedule the season, but there's a concert here, right. There's a flight book there, there's a convention there. I mean, all these things have to be taken into consideration for facilities, for travel, yep. For employees, for concessions, for everything that goes into not just putting on the event, but to putting on the behind-the-scenes stuff that we take for granted. Sure. And you have office workers, you have staff, you have people that have to be able to get to the building or at least do what needs to be done. And we've got to make sure that we have officials. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that they're not triple booked. And there's so many things that I think that as lay people, we don't really understand.
Right.
They just can't say, well, we're going to play next week. Really? Yeah. So there's a big thing to it. So every time I'm asked a question like that, my answer is, I really can't think of it because I understand a little bit more because I've been involved in different aspects of things, that there's a lot more that goes on than just saying, we're going to start next week and we've got the facilities open and let's go.
Right.
And in your situation, it's kind of the same thing. Like you said, can BU play?
I don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. So then do you just say, well, we won't play them and then everyone else won't play them and that makes the schedule even out?
Right.
No, it doesn't. Because that may leave someone with a big gap and someone yep. with, we'll have a day off. Or, right. So you get competitive advantage or disadvantages there. There's so many things that you have to think about that I don't know if we're really ready to think about it yet. So.
No, and you're probably right. And it's funny because today at 12 o'clock, there was the UTR held a tennis tournament. So it's a round robin. It's in West Palm. It's got 4 players, no ball boys. One, I guess they're trying to get back out and see how it would work. And, we're fortunate that tennis is about as social distancing of the sport as you get. But then you've got football and you got wrestling and you got the more that's the anti. So what do you tell the wrestlers? You take a couple of years off and come back right. late? How's the landscape look?
I can't touch that guy. Right? Well, my brother had the idea. It's like, so what? Do I just put sanitizer on the balls now, or what?
Right.
That's gonna work, But everyone's fond of the ball, so right. You put a mask on the ball. There are so many things that you've got to really think about. That if you're gonna do something in a normal setting, then how do you sanitize a tennis court?
Right.
I
know. Today they're serving. Like the one player has his 6 balls with are coated, and the other player. So you're only serving and touching your balls, and so I think a lot of people are watching it to see how it looks and how it shakes out with nobody in the stands and nobody around, and strange, really weird.
You're only serving your own ball.
Yes. So you're only dribbling or touching it with the hand.
And I guess that's something, but you still have to hit it. So
yeah, you're still exposed.
But I guess I can. That's a better solution than I would have came up with, but not by much. I don't know. So, well, Bruce, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been great. I really do.
My pleasure. Yeah,
I'm sorry you have the time to do it right now, but I appreciate you taking the time. So.
Appreciate it, Frank. It's my pleasure, and obviously stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll be back to some kind of sport normalcy within a couple months. So.
Well, I tell you what we'll do. We'll try and check back with you either before it all happens or as it's going on, so we kind of get an idea. We can run the story together that way. How's that?
Sounds great. My pleasure.
Okay. Be safe. Thank you very much.
Bye, Frank.